Parisi Palace, high above 3773's Broadway. This is a live edition of the Jake Feinberg Show. Coming on Power Talk, please go to our website, powertalk.live. Download our free app to your smartphone so you can stream all of our live local programming, including Solomon on Blast, the Jim Parisi Show, and yours truly, the Jake Feinberg Show. We can't thank you enough for making us part of your day today, and had a chance to check this cat out. God, it seems like maybe almost a year ago or so, but he was burning away at Skinny Dennis's as part of an ensemble, and I just really loved his time feel. I loved the way he was just, serving the song, and I also got the feeling that he was able to, in a different setting, be able to open up and actually create new musical vocabulary with the right rhythm section behind him. Marvin Sewell, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Oh, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, it's an honor. We have a game on this program called Name That Voice. I don't expect you to know who the voice is, but I do want you to pay attention to the content, and then we'll come back and break it down.
My father was an excellent folk blues guitarist. He was born in 1900, and from the time he grew up, he worked the rails in this country. And he played guitar, and he sang the blues, and that whole thing where he came from had to come from his grandfather, his great-grandfather. But the soul of that music was he played blues, and he taught me how to play the blues and the history of the blues. And that right there, that music is comes from the motherland too, because the blues came over, like B.B. King said, blues came over on a ship. But I grew up in Southern California when I was 15, 16 years old, playing in some of the worst and the best blues clubs in Los Angeles and San Pedro, California. So I grew up learning how to play this whole transitional blues thing from some of the cats that came up. Like I was 15, these guys are in their 40s and 50s, and they'd been out there playing blues for years. So I was good enough that I was able to play in the clubs in Los Angeles, California, San Pedro actually, and I learned how to play from some of the best, man. My cousin Jack Nelson Jr. came to me from San Antonio, Texas. He had a Gibson Les Paul Jr. guitar. He taught myself, Howard Scott, and my nephew B.B. Dickerson both how to play bass guitar at the same time.
Well, then he just gave away the name. That was Howard Scott from the band War. From my interview with him from September of 2017, and I wanted to ask.
Oh, okay.
I wanted to ask you, Marvin, about how you learned to keep the blues in all the music that you play. The larger point that I'm getting at is that just in today's world, with cats coming out of the academy, I hear jazz, especially improvisational music. There's a classicalization of it. It seems to be becoming a little bit more polished. I don't hear the blues as much. I do hear the blues in your playing, and I just wanted to, I played that clip because obviously Howard's from a different generation than both of us, but his dad was like a folk blues singer and truly played blues, like lived that lifestyle. And I'm just trying to figure out how you authentically learn to play that kind of music and keep it in your music.
I grew up in Chicago, and Chicago blues is ever present, almost no matter where you go. There used to be when sometimes I would take like coming from like high school. I would instead of taking the train where I can get home like real fast. Sometimes I would just leisurely take like the Jackson bus from downtown all the way to the Austin area where I was living, and then take the Austin bus. And I say that to say, as like if I would like to on a Friday, if I would pass by like on Jackson and Kedzie, there was an empty parking lot and blues cats were playing there. It was like every Friday they would play. There was a neighbor, my friend's grandfather in the neighborhood. He would have like blues screaming loud on his on his big stereo box and stuff. It was just it that sound and you maybe about 15 or some years ago when I was already living in New York, I was hanging out with a friend of mine, and it was her birthday, and we were on the west side of Chicago, and she asked me, she said, "Hey, let's go into this club." And I never seen a club before, and it just looked like one of those clubs where people get shot up and stuff. I said,
right,
"Hey,"
right.
I said, "Sweetie, this is the west side. Let's not go in there." We went into that club, and we had the best time, one of the best times in our lives. The jukebox was playing. They were playing. I remember they were playing Lattimore. They were playing, Bobby Blue Bland,
Oh,
Johnny
yeah.
Taylor,
Ah,
and they were serving like tall drinks for very cheap, and the people were some of the nicest folks in there. I mean, so I just say that it's like it's everywhere. I mean, the two things that sort of like made me emphasize, the more bluesy playing and referencing a lot in what I do is one time I used to play with this horn player James Perkins, and at that time I was trying to play a lot of like more angular stuff and just mostly that.
yeah, right, right.
He said, "Man, we doing a certain type of thing here, man. You need to go to a checkerboard and listen to some of these cats
Wow.
and stuff, and or go to that club blues or Wise Sue's Pub or something and go listen to some of these blues cats." And it's not that I didn't listen to them. I was just had a different ear for something else. And then I said, okay, I'll do that. And the next week I came back and I started being more soapy. So now you're doing a bit too much of it, So it was kind of hilarious. But another thing that really really inspired me is that I was playing with these two cats, these two brothers. They saxophone and trumpet, and they had an audition to play in a club. So they drove me there. I had my guitar, my amp, and the person who was auditioning us was Jimmy Dawkins. And at the time, I didn't know who he was.
Right.
I had heard of him, and I didn't know who he was. And we auditioned. And he said, "Man, y'all sound pretty good." I'm not saying this for like self-promotion, but he said, "Y'all sound pretty good." And he pointed at me, especially you. And I mean, it was the most encouragement that I've got a lot of encouragement from a lot of people, but for somebody like him, he really encouraged me. And he basically told me, to try to keep that bluesy thing in your playing, that feeling. And I try to express, where I come from too, I mean, I've always said this about what my goal was to, I wanted to be, harmonically and rhythmically complex as like a Joe Henderson or Wayne Shorter, but in my playing style. So that's what I strive for, and it's always a thing of trying to develop and learn and to see, hey, what do I need to work on, and have those things reveal itself and say, okay, this is what it is, this is what you got to work on. But that's how I always wanted to approach my playing, is to be harmonically rich and rhythmically rich, but also soulful with it too.
Well, I mean, going back to that parking lot where those cats were playing, I mean, don't you believe that that it was the authenticity of the fact that they really were, just consistently they didn't come out of the academy. I mean, they learned, they were playing guitars that didn't necessarily weren't even in tune. I mean, I'm talking about the old school cats. When I interviewed Phil Upchurch, he'd go to Market Street when he was first there, and there'd be like these blind dobro players. But I mean, they were playing their life, And I mean, is that fair to say that you always tried, when you say that you played you tried to keep inherently where you came from, the roots of who you are and your playing. I mean, can you talk about? I mean, did you grow up in a middle class, or did you grow up kind of in the ghetto?
Well, this is the funny thing and stuff. In America, everybody thinks that they're middle class. I mean,
that's a very good point.
I would tell you this. I grew up in a working class family. Both of my parents were factory workers. I didn't grow up. I didn't grow up exactly rich, and I didn't grow up exactly poor.
Right.
And I wasn't necessarily. I mean, I had to. My folks didn't get me a guitar or go to the store and buy me a guitar. That's they say, hey, we can't be trying to finance your fantasies about playing guitar and stuff. I think some of the first guitars that I got that I owned, they were given to me by a teacher who was basically, he was financially strapped, and he got a guitar for me, and a friend of mine that I played in a group with him, that he saw me that I was serious about playing. He went out and bought me this electric guitar that was for sale and stuff, So I'm not saying that I wasn't, my folks provided for me, but we weren't exactly living on a hog and going to I went to parochial schools, I went to Catholic schools, but at the same time, I wasn't like in a boarding school. I didn't get like guitar lessons. I learned how to play on the street.
I love it. See, this is, I mean, that was the vibe when I first saw you play live at Skinny. I was like, this cat learned, he's a true street scholar. And I mean, to me, how looking back on it, having some insight and some years under your belt as a professional, how did that education help you assimilate to play all kinds of music, being a street scholar as opposed to coming out of the academy, which today, in my view, for worse, cats are learning to read music before they can hear the music. And so it's a big issue.
Oh,
their ears are locked. Your ears are not locked. David T. Walker's ears were not locked. Arthur Adams's ears. So can you talk a little bit about how that street scholar mentality has helped you, for lack of a better word, the rise and fall of the fork, how it's helped you keep your livelihood as a musician?
Well, a lot of, because there was a lot of, things. It's a kind of little. Anyway, one thing that I used to do, and a friend of mine used to do, who started me out playing, is that we used to listen to the radio, and the goal was to be able to learn the entire tune that was playing before it ended.
I love it.
So that was the kind of sort of like that was like the ear training, or I would go, there was, and at that time I didn't know anything about, I knew how to play certain chords just because I hung out, because I went to parochial schools. I used to hang out with the nuns that played the guitars and stuff for the service. So I did a little of that.
Whoa. I mean, what were they? I mean, cut you off. I mean, like, did they have was it all just, was the rhythm coming from the guitar, or was there a rhythm section?
It was all good. It was nothing but guitar and singer.
Whoa.
So it's like maybe 2 or 3 guitars and singers. And some of the, like, the books, some of the books that had some complex, they were complex for me. It's because I didn't know any better. I really didn't, guitar is a funny instrument and stuff, I mean, for me, and I was trying to go about it in an academic way, but I was kind of failing at it because I would refer to books. One time I got a book that had nothing but a bunch of chords in there, and and basically it's like, what I'm gonna do with this chord? It's a 13th chord. What I'm gonna do with that? It sounds good.
Right.
I mean, I don't know what to do with it. I didn't know how to apply it and stuff, in the application. So where I learned how to apply certain things was that particular band with this nun playing, Sister Kathy, and we all be playing, and then also I hung out with basement bands, like funk basement bands, and that's how I started learning about rhythm guitar and different chords and how to and stuff like that, and it just kind of grew into a thing. I started meeting more people, and I met a friend of mine who was learning jazz, and his grandmother used to own a record shop like in the 60s or 50s, and he had all of those jazz records, like Coltrane, Wynton Kelly, Cannonball Adderley, Charlie Parker. I had never heard of these folks, and I was like, oh wow.
This is I love. Wait, I want to go back, Marvin. Explain the radio thing, the idea that, because you didn't have a rewind button, like you had to learn. Can you talk about a specific tune that you heard? It didn't necessarily have to be a pop tune, but the idea that, because this is so important. I mean, my generation, younger generations, we perseverate on perfection, but the truth is that all you had the opportunity to do was essentially hear the song one time and kind of figure it out and then make it your own. Is that fair to say? Like when you were listening to stuff on the radio?
Yeah, basically to try to figure it out what the chords were and see if it sounded right and stuff. And I knew, like, I didn't know anything about like chord inversions and stuff like that. Like, a major chord with the third and the bass and stuff like that. I knew certain chords, and I would just like, just pick out the notes. I said, well, that note doesn't sound right, or this doesn't sound right. And to see, and a lot of times there were certain sections of the tune that I couldn't figure out fast enough, because it was just flying by, and I realized later on, I said, man, that was a good kind of ear training type of thing. Like my friend this cat named Wallace Beard, who started me out, he played bass, and he would have the tune figured out quick, like real quick. He had, but I was sitting there trying, okay, what is this and stuff, and what I think what happens is stuff, you begin to get smarter if you look at it in a particular way. The more mistakes you make, the smarter you start to get. It's like, okay, I know it's not this chord. It might be that chord, or some combination of this other chord and stuff. Because you start hearing the sound, and the sounds become familiar to you. It's like, oh, I hear what that is. I see what it is and stuff. I can hear it. It's that major seventh chord that I messed up the last time, and I can hear that's sort of like a 13th flat 9. I can hear it. They become, particular combination of notes and sounds begin to become familiar, so you can like, oh, I hear. They're almost kind of like, I would dare to say almost like friends. I say, I know that individual notes started becoming familiar, so I can hear an F sharp. I can hear, okay, that's what that is and stuff. Or I remember the progression. I say, oh, that reminds me of some other tune that I was trying to learn. And you start like putting pieces together, and at the time I was basically sort of coming up with my own language of what it was and stuff. It's because I didn't have any sort of musical theory knowledge. I was learning that from books and stuff. So I would go to the cultural center, to the library, and take out books or take out records and listen and read and see what was going on, because I like I was saying about having a guitar, I couldn't afford guitar lessons. I didn't have a job, and my parents weren't going to give me like pay for guitar lessons. That was a luxury.
Right. No, I mean, luxury, this is like, no, I mean, is it, I just want you to talk to cats out there, because like the trial and error that you're talking about, is there a way to talk about, like, I just feel like it can't really authentically be learned in isolation. Like, you have to figure it out on the bandstand, and it might mean that you fall on your face a few times. I mean, can you talk about the time where your ears grew the most on the bandstand?
Yeah, I mean, it's because that's when I was in high school. A teacher, I had a teacher that was also, he was a musician. He was he was a band director, but he played gigs on the side. And he said, "Man, you got to learn these standards and stuff." And he said, "You're not going to know all of them. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to pick up stuff by ear, and you become familiar with progression, with progressions, and that's what basically happened. You start hearing familiar sounds, and like saying you like pick out notes and here and there and say, okay, I know it. Okay, it's that, this, that, and stuff, and I missed this pass and stuff, and it keeps coming and say, oh, this stuff is beginning to sound familiar. I can hear the form now, and certain progressions and stuff like that. Okay, I got it and stuff. So I have the basic thing. And then from there, you begin, to figure out how to play on the changes, or and how to accompany, and how to. Then you have to, then it was the whole thing of me figuring out how am I going to accompany people on the rhythmic side of the game and stuff. It's because, instruments also have a certain function within the rhythm section. I learned how to play as a functional player, not so much as a soloist. And and what I mean by that is like, hey, you play guitar, you have to play this certain part, and you got to stick to that part. It's because the keyboard player is playing on this side of the beat, the other guitar player is doing something else, and you got to play your part and stuff, and you have to provide a certain function. Or in the jazz sense, you have to comp while this soloist is playing, and you can't get in the way of the drummer or the keyboard player, the piano player, whatever, the bass. You got to, do these certain things and stuff. Either you can do the Freddie Green approach, do the figure eight comping, or you can, sort of figure out what we're going to do with, like, two guitar players, because I played with this big band. It was like two guitar players, piano, bass, and drums. That was the rhythm section. So I had to figure out, and they were like on me constantly. Nope, that's not right. Play something else and stuff. So, and I say that all to say that, like, learning how to do all of that stuff is and the wealth of that information is a community wealth and stuff. It's because, like you said, it's not just an individual thing. What makes you a better player is the community that you play in and stuff. And I truly think that's ever present. Even if you, like, in your house by yourself playing, if you learning something off of a record, that comes from a certain community or a certain, it comes from somewhere. It doesn't come out of just like nowhere and stuff. So what makes a person better is really help you is when you get out in that arena or you get out in that battlefield and you have to use your ear, you have to deal with other elements. What I mean is people on the stage playing with you. You have to deal with the elements of the audience and stuff like that, and that's gonna make you. That would make you, like, quote unquote, better. That would make you more refined, I would say, and get you the experience.
Did you? No, I think you articulated it incredibly well, because this stuff is not easy to put into words. But I mean, how do you look at, like? I mean, I talk to cats all the time, that live in Brooklyn, New York, and I I'm curious about, the vibe from Chicago and, the differences between the two cities, because at a certain time there was, like, a huge touring circuit that existed all across this country is related to, blues and R&B and jazz. And there's a lot of gigs, there's a lot of gigs. Not every, there was plenty of crap that went down. A lot of people got ripped off. Some people never got paid. But the point is that, and the music was also on the streets. I mean, you articulated that very well when you talked about taking the buses around Chicago instead of the train, and you'd see all these cats out just, playing. The music was on the street, and I see a lot of music now pushed off the street. It's pushed into clubs. We've been taught as a society in the West to sit and stare at somebody's facility as opposed to letting the body dance. And so I just wonder, in your mind, about setting aside your own professional career, just the health of live music and how the significance of music in your mind has changed in our culture.
Ooh.
There are no right or wrong answers, so just riff any way you want on it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's just kind of, I think in a way that, with live music, to me, for me, music was a way to, kind of sort of to bring people together. And I don't necessarily mean all sorts of different people and stuff like that.
Right.
But it's almost kind of sort of like a, yeah, that's an interesting. I mean, let me approach it this way.
Yeah, no, you know what I want to say? I just as an audience member, as a non-professional musician, I can't tell you the amount of times that there's like a half-filled bar or club,
right,
and somebody's coming up and tapping me on the shoulder saying, "Hey, you're blocking my view," and I'm like, "Well, I mean, you could just move and sit over." I mean, music was made for dancing. That's the. I mean, it was like Art Blakey said. I mean, it was. His job was to wash away the dust of everyday life for the people that came in to take in that music. So in your mind, do you even, I mean, you're in your own zone anyway when you're on the bandstand, but I mean, through the years, have you noticed how the significance of, and I guess I brought up the touring circuit because the problem now with musicians, I feel like, our society in the West here views music as a musician's gift to the world, as opposed to it actually being a profession. That's kind of what I'm getting at. I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Okay. Yeah, it's a profession, and but I think on some level, I think sometimes, I don't know, maybe like certain audiences tend to want to, or maybe critics or the media tend to want to over intellectualize things.
Exactly, yeah.
In a sense, like kind of like over intellectualize and about some person's technique or how they approach things and stuff, and try to give it this kind of mystery thing, and not only mysterious, or I mean, that sort of almost like a zero-sum game in a way. It's like there's only like one person that can be on top, and it's XYZ or something like that. I haven't played in a situation in a while where I was playing in a club and people in New York, people just started dancing. I think the last time I remember was about 19 years ago.
Are you kidding? Are you kidding? I mean, are you kidding? That is insane.
Yeah, where we were, I used to play in this group. It was like an organ trio, and we would just like create these sounds and loops and just start grooving.
Yeah.
And people started, they got into it, and maybe like at Skinny Dennis, I see some people like dancing.
Yeah, I'm dancing when you guys are playing, but I know I dig. Yeah. I know. Yeah, go ahead. But I mean, 19 years. So when you walk in, is it is it an unspoken thing where it's like all of a sudden it's like, okay, so these cats are paying this money to see this formula trip, or is it actually, this is a listening room? Like, how does it work? How do you even know when it's a dancing room? I mean, that's profound to me that it's been 19 years or so.
Yeah, well, the club that I played in, it wasn't necessarily a dancing room. It wasn't necessarily, it didn't have any type of definition of what is a dancing room or listening room. We played in this club every Wednesday, and all of a sudden, there was one particular night, and people just got up because we kind of combined different types of. I mean, we would go into jazz and blues, and then it's atmospheric stuff, and then we'd go into some groove stuff. And one time, people just like got tranced out by it and stuff, and I mean, but I mean, but that might have something to do with the type of places that I play. I mean, I don't necessarily play in like a gamut or a variety of places either and stuff, but I've have noticed, like, because sometimes, if a quote unquote listening room and stuff, that could in some ways that can be stiff. It's because nobody's just in the audience isn't expressing themselves, saying yeah, or anything like that. It's kind of like, in a way reserved and stuff, but we're not supposed to be doing that. And
dude,
like
that is exactly my point. I mean, people are sitting there sedentary. You're not moving your body. The blood's not circulating. People are yawning. The espresso machine's rattling around. It's like, what is the point of it? I understand. It's just, it's very, I don't get off on it. I really want people to like understand that I just don't want them to forget the fact that there's only two letters that separate magic and music, and there's a spiritual quality to it. The spiritual quality goes back.
Right. That
even goes back to the field chants, the spirituals, the blues of this country, and it's like I've dedicated my show to that, and I just wonder, like, I mean, it's great for the musicians; they're getting paid better than they ever have. But man, it's like, like you said, those rooms, not like people were like, I mean, I was born in 1978, so it's not like, I mean, if I was going to see Joe Henderson and Woody Shaw, I mean, I think I'd be dancing, but I'm sure at the Vanguard people were not dancing, I don't know what they were doing. So I don't want to be Pollyannish about it, but I just feel like there's something about our culture now on a general level that it's, I just see it all the time because I'm always in front of the PA system. I want to be up right with the natural sound, the band stage sound. And there are cats that'll say, why is this guy up here and everybody else is back there? And, I mean, there's, it's just, I wonder from your point of view, as somebody who's a practitioner and really a street scholar through and through, do you have time to even internalize that? Does it bother you, or are you just trying to sing for your supper?
I mean, I can't. On one end, I can't control how somebody interprets what I play. Interpretation of it and stuff. I mean, I could play I can write a song about, the common man, and somebody else may remind them of when they got their heart broken. It could mean something else for them. So, I mean, if somebody is not I believe I heard Rubenstein say this. Like, every now and then I may try to connect with one person in the audience who I may fake that's feeling what I'm doing, and that's cool for me, but I can't. It's because certain, like, audiences make up of a certain culture at that time. It's like it's a sort of like one big, it's a bunch of people creating a particular behavior. Like, you can go to, like, I've done like musicals and theater stuff where you can play one night and everybody in the audience gets the jokes and start laughing and stuff at the, at the joke, and the other night people don't say anything.
Right.
And it's kind of like that. But my whole thing is like I have to go out and I have to go out and express myself and how and put my thing into the music, regardless of what people give me back in terms of like the expression. Some people, I mean, everybody has a different way of expressing their appreciation. Some people just kind of look, and that might be a cultural thing too. I mean, like like in some Japanese audience, a lot of Japanese audience and stuff, they're very quiet and barely clap, but they feeling the music.
Oh, they're feeling it so hard. I've never been over. I've never experienced. They are fanatical about music. I mean, they support a lot of the musicians in the West. So this time is just flying by. Marvin, I have one more audio clip for you. Definitely gonna have to do part 2, but I wanted to play this for you, and then one final question for you before we wrap up. All right?
Okay.
Well, what happened is everybody was trying to follow Charlie Parker. Charlie Parker came on the scene and revitalized the whole music and changed the way everybody played. And a lot of people didn't know that he was a master blues player. In fact, one of the greatest blues players I've ever heard. But and then we all got behind that and tried to, not exactly duplicate what he was doing, but play with that same feeling. And by doing that, everybody created a little different kind of a sound.
How did you try to make it different? Aside from the same feeling, how did you try to make it different, though?
Well, no, I just had tried to play the blues, just find a groove and play the blues, which worked good in the clubs where I was working. The ghetto clubs. You could play the blues all night, and nobody would squawk about it. But sometimes we try to sneak in some new tunes that they didn't know. and then you run into some problems.
But I mean,
that was a cat, Sweet Lou Donaldson. I'm sure you've run across his records before.
Oh yeah.
And Marvin, because a lot of cats, I remember talking to Joe Sample, and he just thought it was insanity that somebody was like, oh yeah, Sonny Stitt's the next Bird. Like, who wants to be who's trying to be the next Bird? I mean, Miles said, I'm not looking for the next Bird. I'm looking for the next cat that's going to expand and stretch the music. And he wound up passing the baton to Coltrane. And I'm not saying Marvin Sewell is Wes Montgomery or Joe Pass or anyone, but I'm just saying, you talked about it before in a very eloquent way. Our society has a tendency to sort of make one or two or three people in a branding sense like the titular head of the music. Back in the day with these cats, there were 70, 80, 100 dudes that were part of bands, running their own bands. I mean, it takes a village. It takes an army. And I just, is there still an army of cats out there that you see? Maybe jazz or blues is not necessarily the popular music in America anymore. But what gives you, in your mind, what gives you hope for the future of new musical vocabulary?
Probably people. I've seen people out here who have come up with their own thing, and that gives me hope. I mean, a lot of times they, folks like that may not necessarily come into prominence in their present day, but
exactly.
in time,
No, you are you're dude. welcome to the Jake Feinberg show, man. You know, like I've resided to the fact that my stuff might transcend well after I'm gone. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
Yeah, but so there are folks out there. There are folks out there that that are trying that are trying to express who they are and stuff. I always I'll always, to me, that's been you hear a lot of people saying that word tradition, the tradition and
Sure.
stuff. But one to me the tradition to me in terms of like for instance, like with black music, is to have your own voice. And I mean, you can say that with a lot of different styles of music. I've seen a documentary on like classical violin, and it was like saying, back then if you heard this person, that person, you can tell who it was.
Exactly.
And stuff. I mean, and I think that's very important, is to have your own voice, because that pushes the music. It's because it pushes the music in totality. It's because it comes across people approach their phrasing differently in their own unique way. I mean, a lot of times, sometimes it comes from a thing of putting your own definitions to things, or in your own mind, it's like, hey, I know they call this type of thing this, but I call it that. It's, putting your own identity to it. It's like, I used to make it a point, like I would only listen to so much of some of my favorite guitar players or copy them. Like one of my favorite guitar players of all time that I met him and hung out with him was Jeff Lee Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
And I like said, man, I love this cat playing so much. I want to be influenced by him, but I don't want to copy him. It was the same thing with George Benson or Lightning Hopkins or Robert Nighthawk. I said there's a certain point where I want to check out what they're doing, but at the same time, I want to take what they've done and put it into my own voice. And I think that's what's important as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, let me ask you something about, not that you do mentor or teach, but in today's, like when you go to the library, you listen to the radio, you try to figure out the tunes, you go to the library, check out a record, you had actually like only a certain amount of information available to you, and then the rest of it was kind of made up in your imagination. So everything you're talking about is like spot on. But for younger cats who are we are saturated with material today. You go on YouTube, you can find anything you want. And the thing is that what you're talking about with the classical, even the classical orchestras today, you make a very salient point. There's a homogenization of sound. It's becoming homogenized. So my question is for younger cats who, I mean, it's unrealistic in my mind unless you economically can't, it's not feasible, to unplug completely from modern day. We are fully interconnected, and we have iPhones, and you have YouTube. And what would be your advice to cats to help them for them to find their own individual sound in 2019?
Oh yeah, it's like, I think certain technologies kind of like force the music industry and performance plan for people to try to be perfect.
Exactly.
And sometimes you run into situations where people aren't taking chances with the music and risking messing up, quote unquote, messing up.
Exactly. Every show I go to, I just say take some chances. I just yell that out. Take some chances,
So, and because everything is filmed I was on tour last month, and we had just played a show, and somebody had part of the show on Instagram minutes after we finished. So there's this whole thing well, it gotta sound good, it gotta be perfect, and people like saying, well, it's gonna up the game. People gotta be on their game. But the question is, well, what if somebody, I think it's the same thing with comedians. What if somebody is like out here trying to work some new stuff out and trying to work out all the kinks and stuff like that, and I think I heard even Pat Metheny he said everything is a world premiere now.
Yeah,
it's
right.
like you can't like even like go. I mean, even like on even if you're not trying to work something out, what if you're trying to like that you got mixed up on some changes or something, but it could like open up a whole new realm of some other stuff, and people, and I think a lot of people are looking. I think a lot of times, with all this recording and stuff like that, people are looking for a particular thing. It's almost like it's almost like when you look at somebody's profile on Instagram or Facebook.
Sure.
And stuff, everybody has all of the answers. Everybody's life is perfect and stuff, and I'm sometimes I know this is for me. I speak for myself. I'm sitting up there looking. I said, "Damn, my life sucks." I mean,
you're too authentic to fall for that shit. The point is that you're right, though. In a live setting, if you flub a note or make a mistake, that's a gateway towards new musical vocabulary. And cats are so hung up on perfection that it becomes a formula trip. So you wind up staring at the wall. It's bullshit. You have to learn. There are no mistakes. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, but I mean, it's then you get into the whole issue of what is the art and what is the craft.
Exactly.
And things, those type of questions and stuff. So, I mean, you up there, it's live music and it's stuff. It's, it's just like what I heard Tommy Davidson said about comedy, and I say it's the same thing about music. He was saying comedy is a live art. He said it's a ism, not a wasm.
An ism, not a wasm.
Right. It's like it's present. It's here. It's now. It's just like it's not. We're trying to do what we did yesterday the same way, the same thing. It's like live. It's live and it's alive. So yeah, it's what it is and what it is now. It's like right here, right now, or with Jeff Lee in one of his songs, everything starts right now.
Right
now.
And it's actual creation. It's creation on the spot. That's the most stuff that I get off on, And it takes a lot of guts. But you know what? That's what it's about, man. I mean, it's creation in the moment on the spot. And I just look at
I'm sorry.
No.
But the fall to that is the risk to that is that sometimes maybe you being a bit too brave may alienate you in a time like this. It's because everything is kind of like homogenized in a sense, and so sometimes maybe your bravery might so I don't, that cat looks like he's,
I totally dig it, man. No, I dig it.
At that time, he was a lot of people couldn't hear Lester Young. A lot of people couldn't hear Monk. And stuff. And a lot of people couldn't hear Ornette
or Train. They were yelling at Train, make him stop, make him stop. Yeah, they couldn't handle it.
Yeah. So sometimes people, a lot of times people kind of come to music with a certain ear or expectation of hearing and stuff. And when they hear something different, they you hear a lot of people say, hey, they just don't hear it. They don't hear it, or they don't say, that cat, he's doing something. So, I mean, on one end, I would say to cats is to try to search yourself and find yourself through your plan, through your life, and your experiences and stuff like that. But at the same time, that dope, in a society like this, it comes with certain consequences. I think it probably always has, but it's just like, people always giving them their best selves on social media, and I think that falls over into music too. If people have sort of like a particular control over it and stuff, like that's why for me, for instance, I don't think I would never like record myself practicing and post it and stuff. Not that I have anything against people doing that. It's because some of the stuff I practice on is some of the most corny sounding things. But
believe me, dude. You're on. Man, I don't know, man. Yeah, we need like another hour, Marvin. I got to go pick up my daughters right now. Are you gonna be around next week? It'd be nice to do part 2 at some point soon. I just there's a lot more that we need to get to in the sense of talking about, like what you talked about is that this idea of, well, like Lenny White said. Lenny's like, I need to he goes, I'm not going to do justice to the quote right now, but he just basically was saying that like, it's just a lot of other things the other thing that we'll pick up on next time is just, it's like you can't do a gig today unless it's a tribute band, a tribute concert. Like it's the idea of like just Miles and Lee Morgan, Howlin' Wolf, those guys. Their philosophy was, listen, we dig our music, and as the audience, we hope you dig our music. But even if you don't, we're still going to play it. And I just feel like, right. I get it might be financial suicide. It might be a livelihood suicide, But at a certain point, a true artist is willing to put their work out there and be willing to get paid for it later, not right in the moment, because you have to be original. And that, to me, is the only way to sustain music. And actually, cats like you give me a lot of hope, because you're sort of that middle bridge between the old guard and who's coming up now. So I think you have an opportunity, whether you know it or not, to have a huge influence on younger cats who are playing all types of instruments, man. And it was great to hang with you, man.
Oh, well, thank you and stuff. I just, basically just want to enjoy playing music and expressing what I do with it and stuff, But yeah, it's we live in a much more complicated world now, and I think for younger people than I think before. This kind of, like, first you were dealing with the thing with consumerism that's been going on for a long time.
That's right.
People trying to keep up with the Joneses.
That's
and
right.
Stuff. But now you're dealing with personality consumerism, where you have the social media thing out there where, you can be viewed by millions and you like just a regular person in high school, and that has certain like effects and, on folks in the society. And trying to be quote unquote relevant and, whatever that means. And stuff,
Dude, I love it. It's also instantaneous, and it's like you said, someone finishes a show, it's up on Instagram immediately. There's a mass suicide, all these horrible things. You're finding out about them immediately. So I feel like we do live in a more complex time, and it's been brought about by humanity through technology. Before that full interconnection, you wouldn't hear about stuff for weeks, if maybe not months. So there was less stress, and also I think there was more of the pie to go around. There's something to be said for the inequality now is so stark, and there, someone will run to the street corner you give them $100, they'll run to the street corner. So, whereas you go back to the '60s and in the loft scene in New York with Liebman and Brecker and Lenny White and Dave Holland, those guys were living in lofts for $160 a month. They were making that in 1 week in the studios. So you could get ahead.
Yeah.
You could get ahead. And now it's like, well, in order to sing for my supper, I have to play this formula trip because I'm getting paid $300 a night, even though I hate this music to death, but I have to do it because it's the only gig out there. You know, I mean, whatever. We can go. I mean, we just cooked for 57 minutes, Marvin. So let's be in touch. I'll get this up online later. Speaking of technology, but yeah, man, thank you so much, and I look forward to getting back into New York, seeing you play again soon, man.
Great. Well, thanks for the support and the interview. It was fun.
I'm glad. That's all I care about is people have fun, man. You have a good day and keep inspiring people, brother.
Oh, thank you. You do the same.
All right, peace.
Bye now.
Yep. One of the cats, Marvin Sewell, looking to build bridges for new musical vocabulary and new generations. That's it for the Jake Feinberg Show.